Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're doing a deep dive into a topic that, well, it touches many lives. We're drawing from a stack of articles and research you've shared with us.
It's definitely a challenging subject, but so important.
Yeah.
We're talking about living with and supporting a spouse who has alcohol use disorder, or AUD.
Yeah, and we've got some really insightful material here. It goes beyond just, recognizing the signs. Crucially, it digs into the profound impact this condition has on you, the partner.
And how you can navigate it.
Exactly, and how to navigate this really complex situation.
So our mission in this deep dive is basically to pull out the essential insights, understanding what AUD really is,
Right.
how it affects the whole family unit, and practical strategies
Yeah.
straight from the sources we looked at.
Strategies for both supporting your partner if they're heading towards recovery, and also, just as importantly, taking care of yourself.
Absolutely. It's a tough path, no doubt.
But these sources, they really do illuminate some pathways forward. So let's start by just grounding ourselves in what we actually mean by AUD.
Okay. So what's crucial right off the bat, and this is something the material really drives home, is shifting how we think about AUD. It's not simply about a lack of willpower.
Or a moral failing. Yeah.
Right. The research characterizes it definitively as a chronic disease. It's a medical condition.
Yes, thinking of it like a health issue, maybe like diabetes or heart disease, that's a key point in the sources.
Yeah.
It involves actual changes happening in the brain
Real physical changes.
that make it genuinely difficult for someone to stop drinking, even when, things are going badly because of it.
So, okay, if it's a medical condition, how might you recognize if your spouse is struggling with this? The sources give a pretty clear picture, laying out common signs, both behavioral and physical.
The behavioral shifts can be, well, sometimes they're hard to miss. We're talking about things like consistently drinking to the point of intoxication or even blacking out,
Mhm.
neglecting responsibilities, work, family stuff, and big personality changes sometimes.
Like what kind of changes?
Like increased lying, maybe getting really defensive or becoming sneaky about their drinking habits.
Right, you might also see them misusing money or drinking at odd times, like first thing in the morning
Where we're
or during the workday. Relationships getting damaged, maybe lost altogether. Sometimes they start hanging out with a totally new group where drinking seems to be the main focus.
Yeah, those behavioral changes often signal that alcohol is gaining more and more control.
And then you have the physical signs alongside those. The sources mention things like sudden weight changes, up or down.
Unexplained injuries too, right? Like
Yeah.
frequent bruises or even broken bones sometimes.
Exactly. Excessive shaking or sweating can be another one.
And changes in speech, like slurring.
Slurring, yeah, or talking unusually fast or slow.
Yeah.
Extreme redness in the face or eyes, persistent fatigue, and sometimes just looking generally kind of disheveled.
And what the material seems to highlight is that while maybe one physical sign could be something else, they become especially concerning when you see them paired with those behavioral indicators we talked about.
Right, it's that combination, that pattern, that often points towards the underlying issue being AUD.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. And honestly, often where the deepest hidden toll lies, this condition doesn't just impact the person drinking.
No, not at all.
It profoundly affects you, the spouse. The sources dedicate a lot of focus to this wide-ranging impact.
Absolutely. The emotional and psychological burden is just immense. The material describes these intense feelings of worry, for your partner's safety.
And guilt, huge guilt.
Overwhelming guilt. And this is so important. The source of stress, this guilt is often completely misplaced. You didn't cause this.
Right, it's not your fault.
No. And then there's anger, deep sadness.
You might find yourself dealing with chronic stress, anxiety, maybe even depression,
Yeah.
and that feeling of like reduced self-esteem.
Yeah, feeling inadequate if you tried to help and it didn't seem to work.
And the sources are crystal clear on this. You are not the cause of your spouse's drinking. You can't control it, and you can't cure it.
Realizing that, really internalizing that point is such a critical step.
Yeah.
It helps move past the self-blame and also those attempts to, control their behavior.
Which the sources say are common reactions, but ultimately, they don't work.
Exactly. Counterproductive.
And beyond that internal stuff, it really strains the relationship itself, the family dynamics.
Oh, absolutely. Frequent arguments, growing emotional distance, and if there are kids, it sets a really negative example.
That's where resentment can really build up. And family members, including you, might develop unhealthy ways of coping.
Enabling is a key one the sources discuss. covering up mistakes,
Yeah.
maybe rescuing them from consequences.
Minimizing the problem.
Yeah, minimizing it. And while it feels like you're helping in that moment,
You think you are, yeah.
the material explains it actually shields them from the real impact of their drinking. And sometimes that impact is the very thing that could motivate them to get help.
Ah, okay. So that's why the sources push for setting healthy boundaries instead.
Exactly. Boundaries, not enabling.
And then there are the really concrete things like financial and legal consequences.
Yeah, drinking is expensive. It can quickly lead to debt, sometimes obvious, sometimes hidden, but you both share it.
And legal issues like DUIs. That's not just emotional stress, it's huge financial strain that often falls on the partner.
Right. The sources also point out the unfair delegation of chores and responsibilities.
Oh, yeah, the domestic duties.
Because of the drinking or the hangovers, your partner's responsibilities just fall by the wayside,
Yeah.
and you end up picking up the slack.
Which you can imagine just builds more stress and resentment.
Definitely. And your social life. It can really take a hit, too.
How so?
Well, the material describes feeling stressed about how your partner might behave at social events. Or maybe you just start avoiding going out altogether.
Because leaving them alone causes more anxiety than just staying home.
Exactly. It can become really isolating.
Wow. And finally, there are even physical health risks for you.
Yes, this is significant. The chronic stress of living in this situation can actually manifest physically. Things like high blood pressure, insomnia, fatigue,
Digestive issues.
gastrointestinal problems, headaches. The sources make it undeniable. This whole situation is a full-body experience for the partner, too.
Okay, so recognizing that huge impact is, well, it's powerful. If you're seeing these signs, feeling this impact, how do you even start that conversation with your spouse about their drinking? It sounds so delicate.
It is delicate. And the sources offer some really practical guidance, though, on how to approach it for a better chance of a positive, or at least less negative, reaction.
Okay, what do they suggest?
First off, come prepared. Educate yourself about AUD. Understand it as a disease. Look into potential treatment options beforehand.
So you have knowledge and maybe more empathy going in.
Exactly. Preparation equips you. And then, the timing and place are crucial.
Right. Don't do it when they're intoxicated.
Absolutely not. The sources strongly advise talking when your spouse is sober and calm. Find a private setting, minimize distractions. Trying to have this conversation when they're drunk is almost always unproductive.
And your approach, even if you're hurt.
Try to remain neutral or positive. It's hard, I know, especially when you're hurting. But the material emphasizes coming from a place of love, understanding, concern for their health. That's vital.
Avoid blaming or shaming language.
Definitely. They might already feel a lot of guilt or shame themselves.
So using I statements, is that helpful?
Yes, that's a technique they highlight. Focus on how you are affected. I feel worried when, or I've noticed this is causing a lot of stress for me.
Rather than you always or you never.
Exactly. Less accusatory, and provide specific examples.
From your life together.
Yeah, concrete instances, how their drinking has negatively impacted the family or finances. It shows the severity, the real consequences.
And maybe have some resources ready, like treatment options you found.
That can help too, yeah. It makes the idea of next steps feel more tangible, less overwhelming maybe.
And throughout this, stay focused.
Stay focused on your main point. You're concerned, and you want to support them in getting help. The sources also say, prepare for different outcomes.
They might not react well.
They might react positively, or they might deny there's a problem, or they could get angry.
So what do you do then?
Try to stay calm. Be clear about the boundaries you need for your own well-being, regardless of the reaction right then. But the material suggests keeping the door open for future talks. They might not be ready now, but maybe later.
Okay. So let's say that conversation, maybe not the first one, but eventually it leads to some openness. How do you actually help a partner seek treatment? The sources seem clear that professional help is usually critical.
Yeah, often absolutely critical for sustainable recovery. AUD often needs consistent, multifaceted care.
So what are the options? Rehab.
Rehabilitation centers are a key option, especially for more severe cases. They offer these comprehensive programs, typically 30 or 60 days, can be inpatient or outpatient.
And they focus on root causes, coping tools.
Exactly. And often, detoxification is a necessary first step, and rehabs usually offer that too.
What about therapy?
Therapy is consistently mentioned as vital, often paired with other treatments for more long-lasting change.
Different kinds.
Yeah, individual therapy can help them address underlying personal issues. Couples therapy can be incredibly helpful for both of you.
To get on the same page with a professional.
Right, a non-biased third party. And family therapy can help everyone understand addiction better and learn how to support each other healthily.
Looking for therapists who specialize in addiction seems key.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The sources mention specific types, like CBT, that's cognitive behavioral therapy, helps change negative thought patterns. Also, motivational interviewing, and DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, which helps manage intense emotions.
Okay. And support groups.
Also a cornerstone of recovery, yeah. They offer a safe, anonymous place for connection, sharing experiences, getting practical advice. AA is the best known, obviously.
Oh, there are others.
Yes. The sources also list smart recovery and life-ring recovery as effective alternatives your partner might connect with.
Interesting. Oh, what about medication?
Medication-assisted treatment, or AT, is another tool discussed. The sources mention specific FDA-approved meds,
Like?
like naltrexone, which can help block the sort of euphoric effects of alcohol. Acamprosate helps reduce cravings, and disulfiram causes an unpleasant physical reaction if alcohol is consumed.
So deterrents or craving reducers.
Right. And these are typically used along with counseling, not usually just on their own.
And a recovery isn't just a one-time fix, right? It's ongoing.
Absolutely. Lifelong journey. So aftercare and relapse prevention are vital. The sources list things like continued therapy, ongoing support group participation, 12-step or others, and even sober living homes as important ongoing supports.
And that point about not enabling comes up again here.
It does. The material reiterates it. Allowing your partner to face the natural consequences of their actions can actually be a powerful motivator for them to really engage with treatment.
But you can still show support.
Of course, offering to help research facilities, maybe attending family therapy sessions with them that show support without taking responsibility for their actions.
Got it. Now, there was one specific tool mentioned in the sources, SoberLink.
Ah, yes. SoberLink. It's described as quite a bit more than just a standard breathalyzer. It's a remote alcohol monitoring system.
Remote monitoring, how does that work?
It's designed to provide accountability and help rebuild trust, which is often shattered. It uses things like facial recognition, tamper detection.
So you know it's actually them testing.
Right. And it sends the results directly to a designated support circle, which could include you, their therapist, maybe others. And it apparently uses AI to generate clear, easy-to-read reports showing sobriety over time.
So it offers tangible evidence of recovery progress, could help rebuild trust.
That seems to be the idea presented in the sources, yeah. A concrete way to demonstrate commitment and progress.
Okay. Wow. Now, all of this focus on the partner's recovery, but navigating it, as we've discussed, is profoundly draining for the spouse.
Oh, incredibly so. Emotionally, mentally draining. And the sources place immense emphasis here on finding support for yourself. This isn't like a side note. It's presented as absolutely crucial.
Not a luxury, but a necessity.
Exactly. For your own well-being.
So where do you find that support?
Well, first, you absolutely do not have to go through this alone. Seeking external support is presented as vital. Friends, family you trust, your own individual therapist.
And specific support groups for families.
Yes. Al-Anon is specifically highlighted. It's described as a free, anonymous program designed just for the families and friends of alcoholics.
What happens in Al-Anon?
The material notes it helps participants talk about their own struggles, learn coping skills, understand how to detach. Importantly, detach from the disease behaviors, not the person.
Detach with love. Is that the idea?
Sort of, yeah. Detach from the chaos of the addiction while still caring for the person. And crucially, focusing on taking care of themselves.
Are there other groups like that?
Yes, Nar-Anon, for families affected by drug addiction but often helpful, and Celebrate Recovery are also mentioned as potential resources. Even online communities can offer immediate support.
And emergency hotlines if things get really bad, like abusive situations?
Yes, the sources list those as critical safety resources.
What's fascinating here is how Al-Anon and similar groups seem to deliberately shift the focus. It's not about fixing your partner anymore.
Exactly. It's about your well-being, your reactions. Recognizing you can't control their choices, but you can control your own responses and how you cope.
Which brings us back to boundaries.
Yes, setting healthy boundaries is presented as vital.
Yeah.
Essential for your own protection and well-being. Boundaries basically clarify what you will and will not tolerate.
What are some examples the sources give?
Practical things like
Yeah.
maybe limiting or banning alcohol in the home, refusing to lie for them, or cover up their mistakes.
Establishing clear consequences if certain lines are crossed.
Right, like maybe sleeping separately or even arranging to stay elsewhere if they're intoxicated and behaving abusively.
Yeah.
And the key, the material stresses, is consistently enforcing those boundaries.
So they understand the seriousness.
Exactly. It reinforces their importance, both for your safety and maybe potentially as another catalyst for your spouse to recognize how serious things are.
And alongside boundaries, self-care.
Paramount. Actively prioritizing your own mental and physical health is just necessary to sustain yourself through this.
What kind of self-care?
The sources list things we often hear, but they're critical here. Regular exercise, getting your own individual therapy, practicing mindfulness or relaxation techniques.
Meditation, yoga, deep breathing.
Yeah, things like that. And really leaning on your trusted social support network, friends, family who get it.
Okay. And one last piece of advice from the sources seems to be about managing expectations.
Yes, a really significant piece. Recovery is complex. It's often not linear. There can be setbacks.
Relapses can happen.
Relapses can happen. And you cannot control your spouse's behavior or guarantee their recovery journey will succeed. So, manage your expectations.
Yeah.
By celebrating the small victories, the progress made. By accepting that relapses, if they occur, are part of the process for many, but not necessarily the end of the road.
And knowing your own limits.
Yes. Honestly assessing your own limits. What do you need to stay healthy? And sometimes, is the relationship viable for you under this ongoing stress, even if they are trying? That's a hard question, but sometimes necessary.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping this up, what does this all really mean? This deep dive, it just shows that living with a spouse who has AUD is, well, it's incredibly challenging.
Yeah, it impacts practically every single aspect of your life. Your emotions, your money, your family, your relationships, even your own physical health.
And it powerfully highlights that, look, you didn't cause it, you can't cure it,
Yeah.
but you do play a crucial role. You can support their potential path to treatment. And maybe even more importantly, you have to protect and safeguard your own well-being through it all.
Absolutely. The sources make it so clear that balancing that support for your partner with essential self-care, setting those healthy boundaries, that isn't selfish.
No, it's presented as necessary.
Completely necessary for your health and maybe potentially for the relationship's future too, if your spouse commits to and really pursues recovery.
Which, thinking about it, raises a pretty important question, doesn't it? If recovery is this lifelong process with potential setbacks, how does that journey of rebuilding trust, rebuilding deep connection, how does that actually evolve for you, the spouse, who's been living with all the impact, even while you're navigating your own healing and trying to hold those necessary boundaries?
Yeah. How does that rebuilding happen over the long haul? That's definitely something to think about as you process all this information.